Welcome everybody at the session of victimization and hate crime against LGBTI people. How can data collection help? And we are very happy to be here at the Copenhagen 2021 event. Of course, circumstances are different than we would have hoped. We would have hoped to be in a big room all together and meeting and networking. Unfortunately, that is not the case, but we are very happy to be able to share our projects and our activities with you in an online matter. So we're very happy that you're joining us on this interesting session. It will be 45 minutes and will be joined. This is pre-recorded, as you might have understood, and afterwards will be followed by a discussion. So please feel free, if you have any questions, write them down and ask the questions to us after this session. I'm joined in this session, as you can see, by Tudor Taba from actually the Council of Europe SOGI unit. SOGI is Sexual Orientation Gender Identity Unit, and by Jean-François Canot, and he's a general coordinator of the Rainbow House in Brussels. And together we will be sharing our experiences, our data, and our projects on hate crime. So sit tight. Apart from your moderator, I will also be presenting, because I'm working for the Fundamental Rights Agency, European Union Fundamental Rights Agency. My name is Jules van Hoof, and I work as a program officer and a seconded national expert from the Netherlands. I'll be sharing some details with you, some data, and then Tudor is coming in with the experiences from the Council of Europe, and then we move on to civil society, represented today by Jean-François Canot. So I'm going to share my screen and talk to you about the data and the presentations that I've prepared. And first I'm going to share a video with you. Before I do that, with the main results.
Can you imagine being afraid to hold your partner's hand in public? Taking the long way home for fear of harassment? Feeling unable to be who you are, also at work? Or being distressed just thinking about a visit to the doctor? In 2020, this remains a reality for many lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans and intersex people in the European Union. 2019 saw the world's biggest ever survey of LGBTI people launched across the EU. Almost 140,000 people told us about their lives, in their own words. The realities they face are often shameful. Many LGBTI people live in fear of harassment. They face discrimination in every area of their lives. Often it is worse from those who are closest to them. The rise of negative public discourse affects LGBTI persons. And the threat of violence is ever present. But while progress is slow, the survey does reveal some positive findings. Attitudes towards LGBTI people among the young are improving steadily. And in countries where people discuss the issue constructively, prejudice is decreasing. But there is still a long way to go. It is up to the states, public authorities, institutions, and all of us to do everything we can to promote the full respect of LGBTI people's rights. Lead by example. Your words and behaviour matter to fight prejudice, discrimination, and violence against LGBTI people. No one should be afraid to hold hands. For all findings and data of the survey, please go to the FRA website and Data Explorer.
Tudor and Jean-François, I will commence with my presentation and then you will take it up from there. And I have a presentation prepared on the EU LGBTI survey, which is actually the largest LGBTI survey in the world of its kind. And as I said, the Fundamental Rights Agency is the EU agency concerned with fundamental rights of people living in the EU. And we're an independent center of reference and promoting and protecting human rights. We help protect the fundamental rights of all people living in the EU, and their fundamental rights, of course, see them secured. What I will do is I will first talk about a survey development that we did amongst LGBTI respondents in the EU. I will share some details on the main results, and also do some comparisons between a survey that we did in 2012 and the latest one in 2019. And then I will zoom in on the 2019 results. So um, to start with the second one is actually here you can see in 2012 we conducted a research, the first LGBT research. We covered lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people, and they were actually in the all over the EU, the 28 member states, and you can see the division over there. In 2019, we repeated the survey, and this was done amongst 139,799 respondents. As you can see, a lot more people we were able to reach in 2019 compared to 2012. Also, the division was a bit different. As you can see, we were striving together with our national survey contact points, who all covered the member states and the countries covered, and we strive for better representation of LGBTI groups. The big difference between 2012 and 2019 is that, as you can see yourself, intersex people were added in the 2019 survey, and we covered the 27 member states. At that time, 28 still, because the UK was still in, also North Macedonia and Serbia. So we surveyed these almost 140,000 respondents in 30 countries. And the percentage of 1% of intersex people might seem small, but I have to add that this is the largest data set available on intersex people worldwide as well. So very important for advocacy and policy goals. When we look at the prevalence of discrimination in the last 12 months before the survey, we could compare those numbers between 2012 and 2019 survey, and these are the results. So the comparisons can only be done for LGBT people and of 18 years and older, because in 2012, we surveyed LGBT people of 18 years and older. In 2019, LGBT and I people of 15 years and older. But we're here for comparisons. We only do the comparisons for LGBT people 18 years and older from the 28 EU member states. And as you can see, the number, especially for trans people, the prevalence of discrimination in the last 12 months before the survey in any area of life, at least one area of life, as you can see in the slide, rapidly increased. So that from 43% in 2012 to 60% of trans people in 2019 indicated that they were the victim of discrimination. We've also asked if people were open about being LGBT. And again, these are comparisons between the 2012 and 2019 survey. And you can also see there's a big difference there. There's an increase of people, 52%, over half of the respondents saying, yes, I'm often or always open about being LGBT, whereas this was still the case only for 36% of people in 2012. When we zoom in on the different countries that we surveyed, we've asked the respondents over the past 5 years with regard to hate crime, the topic of our session, has violence against LGBTI people increased, stayed the same, or decreased in your country? So it's not about themselves as victims, but has the violence increased? What do you think? And as you can see, there are significant differences between countries. The EU average on the left side of the screen showed that 43% of people said it increased the violence, 33% said it stayed the same, and 23% said it actually decreased. And the EU average, although it says something, we always say, please look at the significant differences between countries, as the EU average is just the average of that. I would like to point out, if you look to the right of your screen, that you can see that there's huge differences between lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans and intersex people in the community. So you see that actually trans and intersex people have indicated that they believe that violence has increased the most. We've also asked what the main reasons for increase in prejudice, intolerance, and violence is against LGBTI people. And without going into all the details, as you can see, the main reason that people indicated was a negative stance and discourse by politicians and/or political parties, followed by lack of support by civil society and lack of enforcement of existing law and policies. So these are the main reasons that people ask for the increase. But we've also asked the people who believed had decreased what they thought the reasons were. And as you can see, it's visibility and participation of LGBTI people in everyday life, closely followed by support by public leaders and figures, community leaders, support by civil society, and positive changes in law and policies. So these are all elements that contribute to a more positive environment and in which people believe, the respondents believe, that the prejudice, intolerance, and violence decreased. And again, we're talking about hate crimes, also victims of hate crime. We've asked the respondents, have you experienced physical or sexual attack in the last 5 years before the survey? The average for the EU 28 member states is 11%. So 1 out of 10 people experience a physical or sexual attack 5 years before the survey. The most significant, though, is if we look to the right of the slide, where you can see the differences amongst the LGBTI groups. Trans and intersex, especially people, they indicated to have experienced the most physical and sexual attacks. 22%, so double of that of the other groups, actually indicated to have experienced such an attack in the 5 years before the survey, closely followed by trans people, 17%. So these two groups are, compared to the other groups, double that of the LGB groups when experiencing a physical or sexual attack. We've asked where this physical or sexual attack then took place. So, because of course, when we're talking about hate crime, we're talking about prevention. So it's good for policymakers and law enforcement to be aware where these attacks take place. As you can see, more than half of those attacks were indicated to have taken place in a street, square, park, parking lots, or any other public space. And the other locations you can see are significantly less. So it's important to keep in mind as law enforcement and policymakers that LGBTI people still suffer physical and sexual attacks the most in public spaces like streets, squares, parks, and parking lots. And of course, this has an effect on how people behave and how people see themselves and their self-confidence. So we asked respondents, do you always or often avoid holding hands with your partner in public? And you can see that actually a whopping 61%, so 2 out of 3 in average in the EU 28 member states says, yes, I always or often avoid holding hands with my same-sex partner. And again, you see significant differences between the countries surveyed. And when we look at the right, again, to the division between the LGBTI groups, we see that actually gay and bisexual men are avoiding the most holding the hands in public and being visible as a gay couple or bisexual couple in that sense. So this is also something to keep in mind, that people who suffer, they're being threatened or harassed for being LGBTI, out of fear of that, they avoid holding the hands of their significant other. So these are things that I wanted to start this session off with, some data to build on, and I'd be happy to answer any questions in the interactive part of this session. And I would be happy to give the floor to Tudor, who is actually representing the Council of Europe, and who will be talking about their work on hate crime. And so please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm once again I'm coming from the Council of Europe's Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity Unit, and we work on a large variety of issues related to LGBTI, among which hate crime, which really represents an issue, and we have a series of activities that address this. As you know, the Council of Europe works on standards. So we have a strategic triangle which focuses on standards, monitoring, and cooperation with the member states, which is one of our strongest suits as an intergovernmental organization. And the standards that allow us to do this kind of work are the European Convention on Human Rights, the European Social Charter, the Istanbul Convention, or the Convention on Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, as well as Committee of Ministers recommendation from 2010 to member states on measures to combat discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. This is one of a kind tool, and it's unique in Europe. It specifically addresses protection of human rights of LGBTI persons, and we are very proud to start a new review of the implementation of this recommendation in this year, which will last until 2025. Following our definition, the working definition of the Council of Europe, according to the European Convention Against Racism and Intolerance, ECRI, in short, hate crime is a criminal act motivated by bias or prejudice towards a particular group of people. And to be considered hate crime, the offense must meet two criteria. First, the act must constitute an offense under the criminal law. And the second, the act must have been motivated by bias. In practice, it's very difficult to separate these two issues, because the motivation of bias is really difficult. We work with police officers, we work with prosecutors and judges on hate crime. And unfortunately, this seems to be one of the most challenging part of their work. For example, in our experience with training police officers on a manual on a better investigation process, the trainees have shared that it is really difficult to have the perpetrator recognize first that this was a crime motivated by bias, or even more so to find the proof, which sometimes the national legislation miss. They do not mention such aspect. The current situation is dire, as you can see in similar events that recently passed, and this gives us even more the power to address this kind of events. In coming back to ECRI, to the European Convention Against Racism and Intolerance, they have mentioned since 2016 that there are increasing tendencies of hate speech and hate crime. Last year, 350 trans persons have been killed globally. The average age of those killed was 31, with the youngest just 15, while 98% of those murdered were trans women or trans feminine persons. ECRI also knows that in country monitoring reports, that members of vulnerable groups, including national minorities, migrants, and LGBTI persons, lack sufficient understanding of their rights and are reluctant to report on hate speech and discrimination. As I was mentioning earlier, this leads to a lack of data on the magnitude of the problem, and undermines our ability to understand and to address the process. For this reason, we work with a series of tools which are specifically tailored for the three groups of stakeholders that I have mentioned earlier: for police officers, for prosecutors, and for judges. These three categories of stakeholders hold literally the destiny of the persons that have been victims of hate crimes, and unless they are offered the tools and the framework of being able to investigate such crimes, they cannot reach they cannot reach a good result for those involved. Following up on those said earlier, I'll share a few activities of our team and where we are now. By 2018, 25 member states including the ground of sexual orientation in their legislation, and 15 did so with regard to gender identity, based on our CM recommendation 2010, from 2010. Training of law enforcement agents to assist with improved reporting and combating the SOGIESC-based hate speech and hate crime. We use SOGIESC and we refer by it to sexual orientation, gender identity, expression and sex characteristics, which is an acronym which covers all of the aspects that we think that are related to LGBTI. You will hear me mentioning this throughout the presentation, and I wanted to give a chance now to explain what does it mean. Working on counter narratives of the anti-gender movement, which is a key figure in SOGIESC-based hate crime. And by anti-gender, we mean we refer to a movement which is really visible now in Europe, looking at the events that passed during this year and last year in Hungary, Poland, Croatia, Georgia. It becomes clear that these events are not singular, and there is a certain framework behind them. And one of our activities is to work on creating counter narratives to this kind of movement. We are also having a very interesting new activity which targets mainly faith-based representatives to counter hate speech. It is, of course, more directed to hate speech than hate crime, but as these two go hand in hand many times, I thought it was important to mention it here. So basically, we will work with representatives of churches and the main faiths on having showing understanding towards LGBTI persons, which unfortunately doesn't happen throughout services and all kind of religious events. And for this, we have designed a training which will help the faith representatives understand and be able to preach further to their masses that LGBTI persons are humans and they are not to be victims of hate speech and hate crime. There are many activities which I would like to mention, but unfortunately my time is running short. So I will just mention two others, which we consider very important. We work a lot on European Court of Human Rights judgments, and this is a very big file, and I would just like to share that the court decisions on hate crime found the violation of Article 3, prohibition of inhuman and degrading treatment, in conjunction with Article 14, which is the prohibition of discrimination, of the European Convention, on the account of authorities' failure to respond effectively to applicant allegations of violent homophobic attack. And this was the case of Savage versus Croatia. We are also working on the implementation of the judgment of L versus Lithuania, and as well as the implementation of the Identoba group of cases versus Georgia, which was in recent weeks. After the Pride, there was an unfortunate incident when one of the journalists at the Pride died from violence. The Identoba group of cases specifically focuses on this type of hate crime, on violence, and we would just I just wanted to mention this to ensure all of those that are watching us now that we will continue our work, and we are there to support, and also we would love to have questions from the audience, and not only during this event but also after the event, looking forward to work together with you. I think this is it from my side, Yul. I can go back to you now, so I'll give you the floor. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Tudor, for highlighting the very interesting and very important activities that your unit undertakes in the region of the Council of Europe when it comes to hate crime, but also other activities that you have defending the rights and promoting equality of LGBTI people in the Council of Europe. So thank you very much. We move on to the next speaker in this session, who is Jean-François Canote, representing the Rainbow House in Brussels, so the civil society in this session, explaining about their, also I would find, a very inspiring approach to hate crime, combating that on the very local level in Brussels. So Jean-François, please be invited to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Jules. I hope the sound will be okay. Don't hesitate to interrupt me if not. And I hope also my English will be understandable. Okay, so as you said, I'm the coordinator of the Rainbow House, which is a platform of 69 LGBTQI organizations in Brussels. So in Belgium, we have 3 platforms, in the Dutch part, in the French part, and for the region of Brussels. Our activities are mainly lobbying, support to organization or member, but also partnership with other organizations. And in Belgium, there are a lot of government and organization, and also social and cultural activities to make visible all different groups of the LGBTQI community. And also we provide to give support to people, individual support, like, for example, the project I will explain you, which is one drop in the fight against hate crimes. Also, before I have to explain you very few words about the context, the political context and the structures in Belgium. It's quite complicated. We have different level of authorities and government. So we have very local in Brussels, which is a commune. Also, Brussels is a region, has also a government, and we also for equal chances we work for at the national level with the different authorities. So it is very difficult to, for example, to share information, to have a global view about the situation on crimes, hate crime and attack. And for those reasons, and the fact that, as you show in the figures, in the data, the impressions of the feelings of violence are increasing. We had the contact with the region authority, the regional government of Brussels, Equal Chances, and the administration, and also with Equal Brussels and Bruxelles Prevention Security, which is an organization, half public, who is working on collecting data and make analysis about securities and giving advice for the government. And we started with the observation that people in case of aggression came more easily to our organization. For example, in the Rainbow House, we have a bar and we open every day, and we receive a lot of people or coming for socialization, having a drinks, and then they explain their situation and how they are victims, and it's a first step to support people to receive information, because we see that a lot of people don't go spontaneously to the police or to UNIA, which is another organization, a public organization where we can make a complaint about attacks. And regarding to that, we decide in the end of 2019 to make this project of reporting, and we started to make publicity to propose permanency and to receive people, and we had a lot of discussion, and we had different schedules to fill, to form, to fill, to anonymize, of course, the situation, and to have a real view about all the problems people can face in public space, in private space, at home, at work, at school, at university, or as we saw also in medical centers, for example. And we take all this information, and of course we were a little bit blocked during the quarantine, but we receive for the moment a little bit more than 100 of testimony, and the Brussels Prevention Security Organization is analyzing and will make a map of that's a way to analyze a map of the areas and the circumstances of the attack. So it gives sometimes a little bit more details than in other situation. And it's a testing program, a testing test. And for example, we made also publicity. We give flyers like this in different public space, and people can call, leave a message if it happened during night, for example, and we call back. And for that, because we have a lot of things to do, but for this project, it's support by of course the region, and the people who receive the victims are volunteers. So we also have to make a workshop to form people, to scholarize people about how to receive people in safe space, how to listen to them, etc. And we take all this information. We have 4 days in evening. We have permanency, and all that is used and collected, analyzed. And we are now restarting that with making a lot of communication. And it takes, of course, time to be known, because people have to talk to friends and the entourage, and then a next step. But here now I'm talking about the future. What is expecting to make connection between the different level, between with the police, with also the UNIA, the organization, to see how we can organize the fully analyze. And also we start to have a partnership now with the different local administration, the different cities, because Brussels, it's 19 cities, 19 level of local administration, who started to hear about the project and to be interested to include that service, that possibility of reporting maybe more available, easy for the people, their client or people who go to the administration. And step by step, we are organizing different collaboration to make sure that people can be in a safe place. That's one first thing, and also that what they give, what they say, will be correctly used to face and to fight against those things. That's what I can say, but also it's a process and it can be developed, and we have a lot of hope about this project. And as I said, it's a drop in the ocean of the fight against hate crimes. Voilà.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jean-François, for this interesting project and the collaboration you have set up in this, as I understand, difficult administration setup of the region of Brussels. But it sounds like you're reaching out to victims of hate crime, and also educating the public what is going on, and the importance of reporting, the reporting rates going higher, knowing what is happening, and also, as I referred to in my presentation, the locations where it's happening, and being in touch with people on that. So thank you both for sharing your experiences and your activities. We had initially invited as a representative of the European LGBTI Police Association to the floor. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. So maybe you both could say something about how and if you work with the police, because I know that the Council of Europe is training the police officers, and maybe you can give a short example of how that works, Tudor, in practice. And Jean-François, could you explain, if you work with the police, how that works, how that practically, what the effect of that is?
Yes, we work with the police. We worked in several member states so far, close to 15. We've organized, I think, even more than 15 trainings, because we don't do, it's not a one-time activity, it's a process, and it goes on depending on the level of knowledge that the police officers have at the moment they start working with us. Our last activity, actually a future activity that we'll have, will be training police officers in Romania. It is part of a more ambitious project. The Romanian government approached us after the execution of the starting of the execution of a judgment. And it is how we work. It's part of our working mechanisms, because as Council of Europe, we provide assistance to our member states, and the work on hate crime with police, with prosecutors and judges is one of our forte. In practice, it is a very delicate process. It's more than that you could see you could observe from the outside of the process, because for example, in Romania, 90% of the perpetrators on hate crime cases that involve LGBTI are deemed to be the the police. And this happens for several reasons. One is a lack of knowledge. The other one is a lack of capacity to organize the police forces in such a way to be able to respond effectively to hate crimes. And not on the last place is the lack of knowledge of those police officers which are involved in the cases. We try to tackle all of these obstacles one by one, and I must admit that it's surprising the attitude of the police officers is changing. Is changing throughout the training process, because in the beginning they are invited to our trainings. They are more or less because they do not have a certain level of knowledge, they do not want to participate in the discussion, but then we give them the opportunity to express themselves, to express their situation, to express what they know about LGBTI persons, and then everything starts going on smoothly.
I'm gonna have to ask you to save the latter part of your example for the interactive part that will follow after this session, because we have a few minutes left, and I would like to give the chance to Jean-François to also share very briefly his experience, his cooperation with the police before I close off, and then we move on to the interactive part, which will take place live. Jean-François, could you briefly explain your cooperation?
Yes, a lot of common point with what is just has been said. It's a very delicate and long process. We effectively give workshops to the police, and the cooperation is quite good now, because the first thing we have to face is about knowledge about genders, identities, genders, expressions, sexual characteristics, etc. And it takes time, but it works. It starts to work. There is still a lot of work to do, but even the government support us to give a workshop for the police and also for the local administration who receive people. So it is good. And one of progress in the police is now they have for Brussels a way to give information very direct with a LGBTQI referent in each police office. So it's a good, slow but good process, successful process.
Very good. So we are cooperating with the police, who are a crucial partner, I think, in combating hate crime and also the prevention of hate crime. In that regard, I would like to close off with the announcement of FRA is working on a publication at the moment. We're drafting key guiding principles on cooperation with civil society and between civil society and national authorities when it comes to combating hate crime, encouraging reporting, and also building trust between the two, between the police and the law enforcement officers and the civil society. So thank you very much. This is all what we have time for, but I hope you will stay on watching us and engaging with us in the interactive part. So thank you very much, and see you at the other end with the magic wand in the live world again. Thank you.
Thank you.